landscape photography world, the podcast for everyone passionate about landscape photography. I'm Grant Swinburne and I'll be your host on this show, talking to landscape photographers about their motivations, likes and dislikes. Marc Adamus is widely regarded as one of the most influential landscape photographers of his generation, known for his bold visual style and ability to capture fleeting moments of magic in the wilderness. Based in Western North America, Marc has spent over a decade immersed in remote landscapes, from the storm-lashed peaks of Patagonia to the frozen wilds of Alaska, chasing light and atmosphere with relentless dedication. In this episode, Marc opens up about the passion that drives his work and the philosophy behind his artistry. He reflects on early inspirations, including the impact of Galen Rowell, and how meticulous preparation, physical endurance, and the emotional connection to the landscape that he has all converge in his images. With stories ranging from months-long expeditions to narrowly surviving a fall in Alaska, Marc reveals the raw reality behind his dramatic and meticulously composed photographs. He also discusses the evolution of the photography industry, his thoughts on originality, and how he continues to push creative boundaries. For anyone drawn to nature's grandeur or seeking a deeper understanding of the craft, Marc's insights offer a rare glimpse into the life and mind of a true wilderness artist. I hope you enjoy the show. G'day, Marc. Welcome to Landscape Photography World. Nice to have you on the show. Thank you for agreeing to be here. How's your day been?
The day's been great. Grant, thanks for having me. I look forward to it.
Awesome. I want to start without going through your life story or your career story, a little bit about why you're a landscape photographer. What is it about the landscape and nature that draws you into it and makes you want to record it?
I think when I was pretty young, I got into outdoor adventure of all kinds. In particular, I just enjoyed the purity and the freedom of just wilderness exploration types of trips. The types of trips where you don't see anybody, sometimes not even a trail or a road, just getting way out there. And I guess that just manifested itself into wanting to document some of those trips. And then eventually that morphed into taking a more artistic approach on it, which became the landscape photography for me. In a sense, I come at this from guiding wilderness trips and leading backpacking, snowshoeing, skiing types of trips for many years. And then that just trying to translated into landscape photography and an interest in landscape photography. And of course, now my business is leading those types of trips.
Fantastic. And you talked about how it morphed from recording into a more artistic approach. What was that process like for you? Where did that little spark go, oh, this is art, not just documentation?
Yeah, certainly. I think that's how it starts for a lot of people, right? We start wanting to document the world around us, the stories, the moments that we have, things we see. For me, so it was 1999. I was given a camera as a gift, and I started just taking it with me for a couple of years. I was interested in just shooting behind the scenes, but really that aha moment, I think, came from my really idol and inspiration at the time, Galen Rowell. Galen, of course, he was one of the preeminent climbers of his era. And I was quite involved with mountaineering as a sport at that time. And I was reading some articles in climbing magazines and the American Alpine Club and things of that nature, talking about his work and some of the things that he had written as well. And I got to looking at some of the photos that he had taken and realized that he was quite an amazing photographer. And I started looking at some of his photos and said, wow, boy, this guy he is absolutely an amazing photographer. Come to realize he's one of the most prolific photographers, one of the most commercially successful landscape photographers, at least in smaller formats, of his entire generation. So here's Galen Rowell, the climber, was also this great photographer. And I said, wow, I think that was really the moment where I looked at some of these images, somebody that was doing things that I aspire to do or dreamed maybe about doing. I don't think anybody ever did quite what Galen was doing, but he was taking just these amazing photographs, far above and beyond anything I'd ever seen. And in some cases, still to this day, I think unreplicated by anybody. So I was really fascinated with his work. Actually ended up getting a couple of his books. High and Wild was the first book that I read of his. And then also Mountain Light, which was one of his really his most famous title. And Mountain Light was interesting because it was not just an adventure story, but it was really a how-to guide on 35 millimeter landscape photography, which I
Yeah.
found incredibly useful. It wasn't long before I had picked up my first wide angle lens and got my first filters and got some graduated ND filters, things of that nature that he was using, and really started, I guess, taking it a little bit more seriously.
Yeah, sure. I guess one of the real hallmarks of his photography, and indeed yours, is that ability to go places many people don't go. And part of that is the adventure, mountain climbing, that whole going into really remote places. How much of that has influenced the way that you've approached your art?
Certainly, the parallels between me and Galen, there's some, but they stop at the really high mountain climbing. I did not co-lead the first American expedition
Sure.
A2, among other things. He was more of a Jimmy Chin kind of guy in that regard, but certainly the thing that I always appreciated most about his work was, just as you mentioned, his ability to really show places and perspectives that other people don't see. And that, of course, has also always been my focus as a photographer. I think that it's just my focus really as a person more than a photographer. I just going my own way, for better or worse. I just have always gravitated towards the process of discovery as a method for learning. I'm not somebody that can listen to somebody else tell me what they did and then go copy that thing. Maybe I just don't listen well. I don't learn well from other people. I just have to do it. I got out of school at 15. I never really had an interest in going back. I just really wanted to get out there, but I've always been very motivated. I've always had my own interests that really motivate me. And for me, when I go into a place where I've never seen any photographs before and I don't really have a preconceived notion, as one might say, about what specific photographs might be available there, it just puts me in the moment.
Yeah.
It gives me a state of focus and energy that I just cannot find any other time. They say there's nothing like your first time, right? And it's
Yeah.
just so true. When I get out there in the field and I'm just faced with a new place and I have this challenge, I have this puzzle in front of me. Okay, how do I break this down? How do I convey the sensations that I'm feeling from this place in a photograph? And for me, it makes me look closer on a place in certain ways. And it really is just a very enjoyable process for me. I'll just leave it at that. Very
Oh, fair
enjoyable.
enough. You raised quite a few things there that I want to dig into and
Yeah.
go down a few rabbit holes with you, if you will.
Oh, sure.
One of which is that, I guess, how you work in terms of looking at planning a trip to go somewhere you've never been before. So are you, obviously, if you're going somewhere fairly remote, you want to know where you're going, you want to have an idea about what's out there
Sure.
before you get there. What kind of
Uh-huh.
level of planning are you putting into that to actually decide, okay, this is the route I'm going to take and this is how I'm going to set myself up for success in that trip?
I do have a pretty good understanding of geography, just lifelong interest of mine, and also maps. I've made my own maps and I'm quite
Okay.
proficient at understanding mapping resources and really how to break those down and just try to see through the map in a photographic sense. In an area like mountains, of course, that might be a huge advantage,
Yeah.
right? But then there's other areas, maybe a desert, rainforest type environment, then a map isn't really going to get you very far, right? And you really do just have to be there. Certainly, I guess you could break that down too in another sense beyond the mapping. You could say there's international travels where I don't speak the language.
Yep.
And then there's domestic travels, like, for example, say in Alaska or even in a place like the UK where I do speak the language, right? I think that networking with other people internationally in very remote areas, in developing countries especially, is really key. So usually the people that I'm networking with, they have some level of understanding of English, of course, and they can translate for me and they can correspond with other local guides that can provide certain types of services. And one thing usually holds true is they don't know a lot about photography.
Yes.
So I have to be able to do a good job of explaining to them, what I do, have them take a look at what I do, and we have to have this back and forth until we gain an understanding of what I'm looking for, on how I like to operate, in particularly the flexibility of schedule that we need to really chase the light and pursue the objectives, if in fact the objectives exist even to begin with, and even if they do, even if you develop them, they just conveying to them that those objectives may change. Right. So it takes a pretty special person. I have a lot of friends of mine, of course, online and in all sorts of different places around the globe. We're all connected these days. We can find each other online, people that are interested in guiding outdoors, wilderness, adventure types of trips. Those are usually the first people that I contact. And then we talk about things like transportation, accessibility, terrain, that sort of thing. Anything also that I can't get from the map that I think would be important. So sometimes it's a months and months long process of just having a rapport with locals before actually arriving at the location. And then if things go as planned, great. If they don't, oh, that's part of the adventure, right?
Yeah.
Von Chenard said that the only real adventure is when things don't go as planned, right?
That's right.
It's you just do what you can. And I like a little bit of unknown as well. It doesn't all have to be mapped out for me, but people are an invaluable resource where in situations where you don't have maps.
Yeah. Yeah. Fantastic. The other thing that sort of came up when you were talking before was the expression of feeling. And I'm interested in how you go about trying to encapsulate a feeling in the images that you're creating. What is your thought process, either in the field or later in the developing suite? How do you go about expressing yourself in that visual media?
I think that the mood of a certain image is derived a lot from the place and the moment and just how I was feeling about the place and about the moment at the time that I was taking the shot. And usually I have some at least pretty good idea of how I want to go about processing an image at the time that I'm taking the image. Yeah, I just certain way that I'm feeling, a certain way that the place is making me feel. But I always believe too in really trying to put the viewer there. I like to create a lot of three-dimensionality and depth in my images. I like to typically give the viewer a visual flow that kind of takes them from one element to another, as if making them feel that they could just walk into the scene. So
Yeah.
I think just encapsulating the viewer, connecting with them through that three-dimensional flow, and then developing a type of mood that was reminiscent of how I experienced the place.
Nice. Yeah. And one of the things that you raised as well was the setting myself a creative challenge for yourself or experimenting within the landscape. How do you go about that? What's your thought process in the field when you're saying, okay, I'm going to try this that I haven't tried before, or I'm going to try this that I tried and failed before? And I guess I'm really interested in the learnings that you gain out of some of those things, because everyone doing photography is learning, hopefully, all the time. I haven't met a photographer that has said, okay, I've nailed it. I know everything I need to know. How do you learn and develop?
I'd like to touch on just teaching as well, because I think that
Sure.
teaching can be a great way of learning. And I think as it really forces you to evaluate your process and describe that to others. And I think that really forces you to answer the question or articulate the answer to the question, why do you like something or why do you not like something? And then through that process, that's where you really learn. So I certainly being out there with others, seeing their approach to things, trying to share with them my approach to things, having that conversation, a lot of learning has happened through that. To answer your question, though, how do I really approach a scene that I have not seen before? How do I really break it down and make it work? It's really, I believe that, first of all, you can break all landscape images down into two categories. You have intimate scenes and you have more grandiose, wider angle, maybe not
Yeah.
wider angle, it's not the right word, but just more grandiose scenes that have more than
Yeah,
one
a broader vista. Yeah.
more than one primary subject.
Yeah.
So they have a near and a far element, right? As
Yeah.
opposed to everything is just right here close to you. So when I'm trying to look for an intimate scene, I think it's almost an impossible task. It's almost something that has to just come to me.
Yeah.
It's like you
Yeah.
don't know where or when they're going to come, right? You can't just
Absolutely.
pre-visualize a really small scale scene and then go shoot that exact same scene like you could a wide angle shot, right? Because they're just all about special moments of light and atmosphere and subject matter in a really small space that's probably just going to only occur once, and you just have to keep your mind open to them. But when you are composing an image that has both a near and a far element, and you're trying to break that scene down and you're trying to simplify that scene, I really believe strongly in the principle of leading lines, layers, and framing. Those are my three go-to compositional structures. And typically, I will find those structures in almost every time that I want to draw the eye from near to far. I'll take, for example, a background focal point like a big mountain, right?
Yeah.
Because there's far fewer background focal points than there are foregrounds, right? If you can
Yeah.
find a good, strong background focal point, odds are you can find a nice foreground somewhere. And then I'll ask myself, hey, is this a layers shot? Layers being something like, for example, sand dunes or like overlook of many mountain ranges type of scene, right? Framing, or is a leading line shot? Or maybe it's all of them, maybe it's two of them, but rarely is it none of them. So I'll
Yeah.
have one of those compositional structures in mind while I'm approaching and trying to break it down and simplify a scene.
Cool. And is there a specific landscape or location that keeps calling you back, that you keep returning to? And if so, why does it hold meaning for you? What is it about that particular place that makes you want to go?
There's quite a few. Coast Mountains, British Columbia, and Alaska is
Mm-hmm.
one. The Karakoram Mountains of northern Pakistan, that's another one. Fjordlands in New Zealand's pretty amazing. But really, when it comes down to it, it's this place right here, Patagonia Fjords. And I know you guys don't have we're not doing the video here with the pictures and everything, but I've got more pictures of Patagonia fjords that I really love that are in my personal favorites than any other place in the world.
Right.
Patagonia fjords it's my favorite place on earth. I think I can definitively say that. It is the place above all other places that I've ever been that just keeps calling me back. I am really a fan of mountains, but especially I love remote mountains where you just don't see any evidence of any human civilization, humanity, trails, anything. And especially I love the places where a wild, rugged rainforests meet the mountains. And when you have Fjordlands, you have that in the Coast Mountains of British Columbia, the other places that I mentioned. But Patagonia Fjords is a whole other level. Patagonia Fjords is the size of the entire South Island in New Zealand, and it is absolutely uninhabited. And you don't see anything there. And by the fjords, not even the entire fjords. Like, for example, there's the Darwin Range, which is in the far south. You get a lot of boats there going to Antarctica and back around Punta Rica. I'm talking about specifically the area between Puerto Natales and Tortel, which is on the west coast of Chile. In that area, you have about 450 kilometers, 500 kilometers of just absolutely pristine wilderness that has no trails, no people, no civilizations, nothing. It is just an absolutely fantastic place to explore. And really, the only way to do it is by boat.
Yeah.
I'm in a partnership with some friends of mine in southern Chile who own a boat. And we do about 3 months of yearly trips down there every year. In the background of your shot, Patagonian mountains. And in the foreground, you see the most beautiful rainforest you've ever seen in your life. Icebergs, spectacular waterfalls, cliffs, everything.
Fantastic.
There's thousands of islands. There's hundreds of fjords. And it's really a lifetime project for me. And even when I do the 3-week long trips that we do, it's just scratching the surface. It's maybe looking at 5 to 10% of the whole area down there. So it's really a place of just ceaseless fascination.
Awesome. I'm interested in how you go about setting up one of these trips. I don't just mean the planning, and the people that you mentioned, but how are you going about getting people to agree to come along if it's a workshop? How do you structure your thinking in terms of setting up one of these sort of very remote? You've got to look at food, you've got to look at shelter, you've got to look at transport, etc. What do those things look like when you're pulling that together?
It's a lot to cover. Obviously, I like logistics. I like the puzzle of trying to figure out how to put on really awesome trips to really remote areas and all that entails. It's a fun challenge for me. It's one that is built over time in stages too. You don't just start out by saying, I'm going to do a 3-week or month-long trip or whatever that just covers this new area. I've been doing the photo tours now for a really long time.
Yeah.
And because I have developed a pretty good base of pretty fun people to be with, people that return over and over again for a lot of trips, people that are very like-minded, similarly adventurous in some cases as well. And usually a trip like that will start out with maybe the first time I go, I'll invite maybe just 3, 4, 5 people that are on a separate list, if you will, that I keep for exploratory expedition type of travels where people know that they're going to be going with me into a place where I've never been, and we're just going to be a team.
Work it out together.
Work out. Yeah. Yeah, so you got to start by taking the right people. I'm not independently wealthy. I can't do these types of trips on my own. So we're talking about trips that are well into the 6 figures just to run the expedition in a lot of cases. So I do have to tap into other financial resources, get other people on board. But I'm really lucky to have met a lot of those types of people over the course of my doing this for so many years. Having a good team, having people that you trust, people that are there for the same reason as you are, that's really key. Now, as far as actual logistics of operating the trip, as I previously alluded to, certainly there's a lot of rapport back and forth that goes on with locals, local guides, local facilitators, and operators that can provide certain types of services. You just do the best you can with those people. Like, for example, when I started running the Patagonia Fjords trips, I had already been in Patagonia for a number of years. And through my connections with guides in the parks, I was able to reach out and meet a local owner of a boat. Happens to be really the only boat of its type anywhere in Puerto Natales. And we had a good long conversation one year, and we just decided that, hey, we should definitely do something together. We're pretty like-minded individuals, and we just divvied up who's going to handle this, who's going to handle that. Every trip's different. I think you can break trips down into trips where you are camping and trips where you are not camping. Just loosely, that's a big thing because it requires just a separate set of gear, and you've got to source where you're going to get that gear from, how you're going to get all that gear to the location, whether you're going to have people bring certain things. Make sure that the gear is all accounted for. You'd have to have that checklist just from doing this a million times. As far as food goes, yeah, generally with international regions, remote regions, that's something that I'm going to rely pretty heavily on my sport team, local guides to provide. They're going to be the ones that have all the connections. But on other trips, like for example, Alaska in summer, which is where I'm going next, I'm the cook. I literally provide it all. We go helicopter into the mountains for 9 days, and we're bringing 300 pounds worth of stoves and food and equipment just for cooking, because we eat well on my trips. I'm not messing around. I treat these guys really well. They're gonna enjoy some great meals out there, and I've done it for so long, and I have such a good understanding of just how that process goes that I'm able to facilitate some pretty good meals. But then you have to look at things like, okay, what's the weather? What is the perishability? What is the portability of items? So once you start to get into the camping types of trips, then you have to break it down further, and you have to say, is this a backpacking trip where we're going to be carrying everything on our back, or is this just a base camping trip where we can leave everything at base? Now, if you can leave stuff at base and you've got a refrigerator, let's say a glacier is my refrigerator, right? So either a big snowbank, somewhere or a glacier. Those are my two choice refrigerators up in Alaska. And I make sure that wherever we're base camping, we've got one of those two things. We're either next to a big snowbank or we're next to a glacier, or perhaps we're on a glacier. And in that case, we don't have to really worry about the perishability of items. But if I do have to worry about that, if we're going to be camping in a river valley somewhere that we've helicoptered into, then obviously you got to think about, all right, what can I really bring? What are the temperatures going to be like? Or maybe if it's too warm, or even if it's too cold. If it's too cold, if you got one of those trips where you can't bring veggies because it's going like below freezing and then it's above freezing again, and then it's going back to below freezing, then you got to bring the dehydrated stuff more because everything you have is just
can't have that
mush.
frozen.
So there's a lot of temperature considerations in that regard. And then finally, there's portability considerations, right? It's not just a weight to size ratio. It's really like a weight to calorie to size ratio. You're looking for something that's very calorie dense. That doesn't weigh very much, but it also doesn't take up a lot of space. Some of these dehydrated meals or whatever for backpackers, they don't always have a lot of calories. They're not always really calorie dense, and they do take up quite a bit of space too. You got to look at that. There's a ratio you can use to determine percentage of calories from fats versus proteins, carbs. Usually it's about 60-70% from fats, and just so on and so forth. Like while you're packing these things, you're actually counting calories, you're looking at space, you're repackaging everything. You're looking at all the things that I previously alluded to, temperatures, all that stuff, and you're just designing the best menu, the best food for that specific endeavor, and length of trip, type of terrain, all of these things. Just, you got to have a lot of experience to make sure that you're prepared for whatever type of trip it is.
Amazing. I never really thought about all of that level of detail, but now you're saying
and there's more than that too. I just don't want to ruin.
I'm sure there is. It just makes sense when you go, okay, it's not just weight and size, it's actually calories. What are you getting out of the food that you're taking with you? You can't just pack 20 kilos of steak and hump that into a remote location.
No, exactly.
I'd like to take you back to when you decided to make that your career, make that adventure tourism part of a business for you. What was that process like for you? Where were you in your life when you made that decision, and what were the thought processes that you went through to go, okay, I can really do this. I'm going to commit, pull the ripcord, jump out of whatever plane you were in and go for it.
As I mentioned, I got out of school pretty early. I recognized probably as a child that I really wasn't able to follow the path that maybe others had wanted me to try to follow, something with more structure and more predictability. And I had always had really strong interests in outdoors types of things, meteorology being one of them, geography, map making. I guess there's things that kind of led me down that path to begin with. For a number of years, I just bounced around, taking all sorts of odd jobs, looking at a number of places, wildland firefighting, just bounced around different things, just so I could afford the next trip, really. And all the while I was guiding wilderness trips, but not making hardly any money on it. It was more just my friends, they relied on me to be the planner. I was the glue that kept it together. I was the one that going around recruiting people to come on this adventure and designing the whole thing, and not really even realizing fully that I could be paid for that. That could be a career. So I got into photography first, and I started with film. In those days, a whole photo tour thing wasn't really a thing yet. There was photo workshops, but they were much more structured. They were part field, part classroom, critique, that sort of thing. There weren't a whole lot of things like what we're doing now. But then some years went by, and I went full-time professional with the photography thing, just struggling to get by, just doing stock, selling prints, I did okay. I was in 30 different calendars a year at one point. So I did all right with that, but I was never making good money at it. But considering that
photography alone is a tough gig to make money.
And I didn't have a lot of responsibilities at that time in my life either. So that kind of, today I could never do it like that. But interesting thing, of course, when digital came around, there just became this really big emphasis on teaching, right? At that point, because everything was changing so fast, right? Everything really changed very quickly. There were so many more people that just got into photography just due to the accessibility of it. And I think initially the internet helped with that. One could argue that the internet's kind of hurt with that later on, at least the social media age.
Now, I want to dig into that with you a little bit later,
but it's definitely, there was a lot of people that really got into it. I think from probably about 2006 or so, I realized that, hey, I could have just teaching photography as a primary source of income. Like, this is what people want to do. They want to meet me in person, and they want to go on a trip, and they want to learn photography.
Yeah.
And I did that for about 10 years, up until about 2015, 2016. But I was always interested in leading more adventurous trips, taking people outside their comfort zone a little more, or at least into places a little bit more remote. And was just never really able to go all the way down that road until I had built up a kind of a core group of clientele that goes with me a lot and are interested in those types of things, and made my name in that field, right? I think as the last decade has gone by, you've seen me shift away from the teaching of apertures and f-stops and filters and stuff like that to like more into adventure tourism, which interestingly enough is where I started out. That's where I started out myself, and what I'm really personally interested in. So I think designing these types of unique trips to really unique places around the world is something that has always really interested me a lot. And we've just come full circle here just due to my experiences and the resources I've been able to collect over the years to facilitate these types of things. I think that's the direction that we're going to continue going forward.
Yeah, okay. And is there anything that you would change from your career looking back and saying, I probably could have done that earlier, I could have done that differently? Is there something that you look back and go, okay, I probably screwed up there, could have done it differently?
Sure. There's lots of little things along. I'm sure if I traveled that same road twice, there's a lot of places I'd turn left instead of,
it's much easier with hindsight, eh?
Yeah, of course. Are there big things, really big things? Probably not. We're talking now. I'm here now. You can't look back too much. I don't like to look back too much. I like to keep in the moment and just, if there were mistakes made, then okay, fine. We'll learn. We'll move on. And it just, I think I was a late comer to the internet. I was a late comer to computers. I'm not real friendly with technology, just in general. And that is definitely, I was one of the last to switch to digital. I felt like among professionals, I was one of the last to get a computer, start scanning film, doing digital submissions, all these things. Usually my lack of understanding of whatever the cutting edge technology is does tend to delay my ability to get involved with whatever the current scene is. But at the same time, I'm pretty happy going my own path usually. No, I can't think of any one big thing where I would go back. There's a lot of small things, but I don't like to dwell on them.
Okay. What does success look like in your photography?
Success. You mean define that a little bit better for me. Is
your definition,
artistically satisfied or in the business sense or what?
Yeah, I look at it from personal satisfaction. What is it that gives you joy out of it? What is it that makes you go, yep?
It's definitely just the sense that every day is different and that you have a unique challenge in front of you. I don't do well in routine. People that have routines, they do the same thing every day. That's not easy for me. It is easy for some people. I've heard a lot of people say that. It is not easy for me. I like to have a challenge in front of me. I like to have a goal in front of me, even if that goal is not really defined. It's just probably this real primal urge to just go into nature and look around and get to know a thing, a place, a time, a weather, a moment, and just try to look for that one thing that's going to come along and capture it and bring it back. I just love the challenge of doing that. And I love that there's never any two that are exactly the same. So that's one of the things that keeps me real interested in just going to new places. I love just reacting. I'm at my best when I can just react to what nature's giving me. And it's just this dance. It's just me and I'm listening to nature and it's listening to me and we're just having this interaction. And I just feel like I'm in this moment, in this zone that it's hard to define. It's just almost when I was climbing mountains, or doing some really long distance, difficult wilderness adventures. When I was younger, I would, have this level of focus just on the task at hand where you just reach this clarity of mind and this simplicity that it's just hard to find any other place. And I feel like photography gives me that when I'm in that moment and I'm pursuing those images.
Yeah, sure. Speaking about those times when you're just reacting, you got a story from deep in the field where things didn't go quite as planned, but something unforgettable still emerged.
Oh, of course. My goodness. Just so many. Yeah. I don't even know where to start. Yeah. There's a place in Patagonia fjords that doesn't have a name, but we just call it the Forbidden Paradise, if you will. It's
Nice.
like it's this place that we've tried many different times to reach. So we were boating by, I think it was about 7-8 years ago. And my buddy, he said, "Hey, Mark, come check this out." And I looked, and in the distance, I could see just these sheer cliffs and these waterfalls, just barely see them, just barely make them out.
Yeah.
Of course, there's no roads, trails, nothing that goes out there, but I could just barely see the outline of just what it just looked totally different than any other area around it. And I said, "Oh my goodness, what is in there?" That really just struck me, and the vision just stayed with me. And when sometime later, we were boating back by there again, and I'd completely lost track of where we were. I didn't even recognize that we were anywhere near there. It was getting dark. It was the end of the day. It had been pouring rain all day. I just totally was not thinking that anything was going to happen. And as we were going by, I looked at this point of land with some trees on it, and I thought to myself, wait a second, this is right near that spot that I saw. And as I went up on the upper deck to take a closer look, the whole world just cleared off. It just started, like the mist just started breaking up, and the sun started just pouring down. There was, through a little hole in the mist, this sun was coming through, and it was the only hole that we'd seen the whole day for probably 100 miles around. There wasn't a single thing anywhere, and it just perfectly illuminated this magical place that was so far in the distance that I needed my 500 millimeter to capture it.
Wow.
And I called my friends up on deck, and all of us were just shooting, like frantically, just shooting. And we're not saying a word. Like, all we can do, we're just completely silent. All we can do is just shoot and shoot, because we're just mesmerized by these huge sheer waterfalls coming out of this just misty rainforest and these cliffs hundreds of meters high on either side. And it was just like this unbelievable 10 minutes where I just took hundreds of shots, and then it was gone, just closed up again. And it continued to rain the whole rest of the night and got dark, and we didn't see anything else for 2 days after that.
Wow.
And I have other stories about that specific place and why we call it the Forbidden Paradise, but we've actually tried to get in there on foot a couple of times, and it has never quite worked out for whatever reason. But I think that sometimes a place remains untrammeled forever for a reason. It's really a special place.
Sounds fantastic. That story is just amazing.
Yeah.
I can actually picture it, even though I've never been there, never seen it. I can picture it. Thank you. What about horror stories, times when things have really gone pear-shaped? Are there any situations where you're sitting there going, "Oh my God, this is really bad"?
Yeah. I like to keep those types of things to a minimum while I'm on tours.
Of course.
It's one thing to do things yourself, but watching your participants who have come on your trip do those things that worry you, that's a whole other level. Luckily, we've never had any real serious injuries on trips to the point where it was life-threatening or anything. But yeah, certainly just throughout the rigors of doing this over so many years, there's been things that happen.
Yeah.
Usually when you least expect them too. Maybe not even because you were trying to do something crazy. Just stuff happens. Yeah, about 4 years ago, 5 years ago, 4 years ago, I was up in Alaska. We were exploring a new mountain range. So I'm with 5 friends of mine. And these are all former tour participants, but they're all very capable individuals. We're just on a kind of an expedition trip, just as friends, right?
Yeah.
So we're going to explore this new mountain range, and to explore the mountain range, it's going to take all day, the helicopter running load after load to base camp from town, which is like more than 100 miles away. So the helicopter drops off me and the first load of stuff at base camp.
That's right.
And as I'm like walking around the base camp, like just setting stuff up, waiting for the second helicopter to come back in, I put 50 kgs of food on my back to take it down to a refrigerator in the glacier. And pretty easy terrain, not anything out of the ordinary, pretty easy terrain, just some gravel on the surface of the glacier. You can't even see much ice.
Yeah. Right.
And just walking over up and down over some undulations of the glacier, and I just get my foot caught in between two rocks. And I just, before I know it, like the weight of the pack and the momentum, it just takes me
Balance there.
forward. And right in front of me, there's just a little crevasse in the glacier, not a big one, just like you can see the bottom. It's just a couple meters down. And I take one step forward and I can't break my fall. And there I go. I'm just falling forward with 100 pounds weight on my back. And boom, I go 2 meters down, 2.5 meters down into the bottom of this hole, brace myself like this, and I tore this entire, my entire shoulder right out of socket and broke my arm in 6 places, knocked myself out, was bleeding all over the place when I came to, and I'm like, get down there, and I'm like trying to figure out what just happened. I look around. It's pretty easy to deduce what happened, and that is I was carrying this heavy pack and fell into the hole. I'm thinking like, okay, let's not hyperventilate here. Like, where am I? What way was the camp? Okay, so I'm like, just leave all the stuff down there. I'm like kind of woozy and everything. Take a
That's
couple
massive.
steps, like try to not black out. Just going back to about where the camp is, and I get back to where the heli had dropped me off, and where we had put the first load, and just wait right there at the camp. And
But there was no one else there.
no, but my friend Vivek and his other friend Todd, they were on their way in. I think he was coming in, yeah. So they were on their way in with the helicopter, and they just landed right when I was getting back. So they see this guy that just covered. I see Vivek first, and I'm like, I'm just covered in blood and everything, and I'm holding my arm. I'm like, you're not gonna believe. Yeah, so I tell him what happened and everything, and the heli actually had just dropped them off. Unfortunately, like we were not in radio contact with the helicopter at that time, but we knew that the helicopter was going to come back in again because it was in the process of dropping loads. I get back, finally the helicopter comes in a third time, and I'm able to helicopter out. When I went to the ER, ended up having to have surgery on the shoulder and everything else, and it was a long recovery process. Ended up missing the whole summer, so it was but for those guys, they went on to do the whole trip themselves. Even without their cook, they went on to make it happen, and they got some great shots. And I was texting them over satellite from a hospital bed, telling them more about the area and stuff. So it was.
They retrieved the pack from the crevasse.
They did. Oh yeah, they retrieved that pack. Had a lot of the perishable food in it, so it was to retrieve it, no problem. Yeah, but it was not difficult terrain in the slightest, and it just goes to show you, even when you're at base camp, something can happen.
Absolutely, that's incredible. Thank you for that. Yeah. That's an amazing stuff.
Yeah,
I like to ask, usually after the horror stories, what has landscape photography taught you about the world, or what have you taught yourself about the world from landscape photography?
I'm fortunate to get to meet a lot of really great people, I think, doing this. I think that landscape photographers, they're among the best people that you can get to know. They're generally very open-minded, love to travel, love to see new things. They're people that embrace new experiences typically. They're a great bunch. I've certainly learned a lot from the people that I've traveled with over time. I've learned more about how I learn. I didn't really understand it as a child. They just forced me into a very rigid public school system that just wanted me to do exactly this, and I just didn't fit. It was like putting a square peg into a round hole, and it just was obvious to me that it was never going to fit. And they just kept saying this is the only way. And I guess I realized that there's just a lot of different ways that people do learn things. A lot of ways to succeed in life if you just follow your dreams and you're passionate about something. If you're motivated for something, you are gonna make it happen. You just have to be. Certainly, you have to have some support. You've got to have people that are there for you at the right times. You can't never do everything yourself, but I think it starts with having that passion And I've learned a lot about how I learn through experience, through doing things, through the process of
Yeah.
doing and talking about those things and articulating those things to others and just going through that process of working with others. And I've also learned a lot about how other people learn because it's not the same. It's
No,
not the same
that's
all
right.
of us. A lot of the people that I work with, they're terrific at listening to what I'm saying and understanding that and incorporating that into what they do. And it's very gratifying for me to be able to share that with them.
Yeah.
So I think the
I,
way that I learn and the way others learn around me is something that I've really learned.
yeah, I think that resonates really well with me. I left school early as well. I left at
Mhm.
16, and it
Yeah,
was largely because this rigid form of learning
sure.
just wasn't working for me. And
Yeah, sure.
being a cocky 16-year-old, of course, I knew everything.
Yeah. Of course. Yeah.
But beyond that, learning about how to learn or how you learn, I think is one of the greatest lessons that you can learn about
Absolutely. Absolutely.
understanding. Okay, this is the sorts of things that trigger my brain to go, okay, I'm going to cement that in. I'm going to keep and retain that information.
Mhm.
For me, a lot of it was, funnily enough, was actually about reading more than doing.
Yeah.
Listening didn't work. Doing worked, but to a point. But reading and actually retaining information, comprehension, that sort of thing, I could do that from a very early age. So I was the kind of guy that, say, in art class, would get 98, 99 in my art history exams. But the
Uh-huh.
practical exam, not so much. So I
Yeah.
couldn't paint or draw to save my life, but I
Uh-huh.
could tell you what Matisse did with his brushstrokes.
I can tell you that I was pretty much the exact opposite of that,
Yeah.
but I was the same in the sense that we both kind of learned how we learn
Yeah.
and found a way to make do with that.
Speaking about doing and the process, I'm interested in how people process their images. Are you straight into it after a trip? Is it something that you've got to get into and
Yeah. Oh,
get it
absolutely.
in straight away? Or are you kind of, I'll
100%.
get to it later?
100%. My images are processed by the time that trip ends.
Wow.
That's it. You see I was in New Zealand on a boat for 9 days. They're done already. They're done.
Wow.
To say I'm straight into it is accurate. Yeah. I know what I'm looking for generally. I have an idea at the moment of capture, how I want to bring that image to life.
Yeah.
And I go do that. I feel especially connected to the shot when I first take it. And there's just this emotion that's still there. It's still really raw. The memory of the scene is still really there, how it made me feel, everything. It's just most vivid at that time. And I just can't wait. For me, it's like telling a child to not open their toys on Christmas. They got them sitting right there, in this case on my hard drive, and I want to process them, right? That's just always the way that I've been. And I recognize that a large percentage of the landscape photography community is not like that, and that's fine. Great.
Yeah.
Whatever does it for you, great. But I think I move around a lot. I'm constantly on to new trips, new adventures, just trying to stay in the moment. And I just like to do it that way. It just brings me joy to do it that way. I don't feel any pressure to. I just want to. I just really want to do it that way. So I always have.
Yeah, it's interesting the way that different people approach it. Some people have to have that separation. They need time to not be thinking about being in the moment. But there's others similar to you as well. I do a mix. Some stuff is just kind of, okay, I'll make sure that it's on the computer and backed up, but I might not touch it for a week. But other trips and it might just be a quick trip down to a beach or up to the mountains here.
Yeah.
And I've got to get back and get straight into it because the excitement is there. The desire to actually get that image is just burning in the back of the brain and going, you've got to do this.
Yeah.
Pardon me. Do you prefer, obviously photograph with other people a lot. Do you prefer photographing with other people or do you prefer to be alone?
No, I do. Yeah, it's an interesting question. I do prefer other people for certain types of trips. I guess I would say I don't really have a super strong preference overall. I
Okay.
can certainly do either way. I've done 35-day solos where I never talk to another person, and I'm fine with that. I don't miss it. But at the same time, like shared experience through like-minded people, it can add a whole nother level of
Absolutely.
depth and just being able to share that experience and talk about that. And certainly I enjoy both. I don't think I have a strong preference on that.
Fair enough. Yeah. If someone's struggling to find inspiration, what advice would you give them to reconnect with their creative spark? Because everyone has those times when it's just not working for them or they're just not feeling it. How do you deal with those situations? What advice would you give to somebody that's in that situation?
Oh, yeah. It's actually, I don't know if I've had that question before. I think that, yeah, for me, it's always been a lifelong interest in travel and
Mhm.
wilderness adventure. And I don't see that changing probably just because it never has changed
Yeah,
in my
yeah.
life. So from that, my photography just manifests itself. I think that somebody who is an artist who wants to express themselves personally, the art will come. It will
Yeah.
find a way. Maybe it's not always the same art. Maybe you move from photography to something else, or from music to something else, or whatever it is. But when as human beings, when we need to express ourselves and we cannot find a way to do that, art comes from that
Yeah.
in whatever way. As far as people that are just not finding it with photography, I have never personally experienced that. I feel too much social media, too much looking at the same things, the
Mhm.
same places, the same images can dull our senses.
Sure.
For me, I think if you're an individual, if you're looking to express yourself rather than just replicate what somebody else is doing, then there's just going to be an endless source of that.
Mm.
I don't know. I find that generally when people endeavor to do photography, they usually follow one path. At
Mm.
first, they're following recipes. They're looking for what other people are doing and they want to try to learn through that
Yeah.
process. And there's nothing wrong with that. It's great. But then you get to this point where the paths diverge. You find the people that are going to become more individual, the people that are going to develop a particular style, something that kind of really endears them personally to photography in a way that they can use that medium to express themselves.
Sure.
Or they just continue to do the same thing that other people are doing. And I do find that it's that group of people that do tend to just get bored with it and just move on.
You talked there a little bit about social media and the impact that can have. I'm interested in photographers' views on photography's place in society. And it's not just social media, but that's obviously a big part of it nowadays. But I'm interested in how people see photography's role in society. Where do they see it going? And what sort of aspects do they see and trends that they're seeing in photography that sort of are changing in that role in society?
Okay, photography, as I know it, is now and always has been, probably always will be the only way that we have, or the best way that we have to document a specific visual moment that we experienced in our life.
Yeah.
It is unique in that aspect with the reality that we have around us, although of course there's some interpretation in the artistic sense, but it remains the only medium that we have to document specific moments visually that we have. I think that it's always going to be there for that reason.
Yep.
We have other ways, obviously, to make images, but we don't have any better way to document experiences, to document the visual reality that we perceive. So I
Sure.
think that photography is very important in that regard. And I think that that's why it's always going to have a place.
What do you see as the biggest challenge facing photographers, and in particular landscape photographers right now?
I think that we're in a process of great change with the advent of AI types of imaging.
Yep.
I would say that nobody's going to do a 3-week long trip to Antarctica and then tell AI to make a picture of Antarctica for them. That's not
No,
really
not.
what people are so in that sense, there's always going to be this reason for the photography, right? It is
Yeah.
your experience. You're there experiencing that thing. But yeah, I think just as the general public goes, just understanding what the photographic medium means, why it exists, we have to have it. It's absolutely essential we have it, and we always will have it.
Yeah.
And I think that not just as landscape photographers, but even more importantly for journalistic or documentary reasons, we need to always have photography, and we always need to have a way to know which images are coming from the camera, which ones are
Definitely.
recorded from the light that was in front of us versus being created from pixels artificially. One of the things that I've seen developing lately is that AI is actually really good at knowing what is AI. And
Sometimes, yeah.
you can use, there's a lot of development in the AI detection type of software, like Sight Engine, for just as one example, that you can use to determine whether an image was artificially generated or
Yeah.
not. Also, I think that sort of detection is going to have to become commonplace. I don't think there's really any other way around it, especially with it really manifesting itself into video roles and all aspects of our lives. When you can't tell what was artificially created and what wasn't, obviously that's just a massive problem for humanity, period. It's just an absolutely massive thing. So if we don't find a way to answer that question, if we don't find a way to solve that problem, then we're just not going to get very far. It's just as a species, we're going to be in a lot of trouble for a lot of reasons. So I think that people working in those tech fields are very cognizant of that. I think the manufacturers of these technologies are very cognizant of that. And I think that as time goes on, you're going to see better and better ways to determine what was artificially created and what wasn't. You know, of course, us people in the landscape photography field, we don't need machines to tell us this. We know. We love what we do.
Yep.
We know what we're seeing for the most part. It's not going to change the way that we approach our art. But if an image goes up for sale at Sotheby's or something like that from a famous artist, you're going to need to know, hey, is this the real thing or not?
Absolutely.
You know, police need to use an image forensically for some reason. We're going to need to know, is this a real thing or not? Even in photo contests or something like that, we need to know. So if there's a lot of financial incentive to know the answer to that question, then there will be a solution, right?
Yeah.
And I think that you will see that as time goes on.
Yeah, fascinating. What's the best and or worst piece of advice anyone's given you?
Oh boy, the list of worst. Where do we even start here?
Don't become a photographer. You'll never make any money.
Yeah. There was a lot of those. It's a tough one to answer as far as worst. I think just what you alluded to, growing up, there was always a lot of people saying that this was the path. This was the path you had to take. You have to go to college. You have to get your degree. You have to do this, do that, or you'll just never amount to anything. And it just simply isn't true. I think my parents, they stood by me though. My parents, I have great parents. I really do. My parents recognized from a very early age that I was just different, and they were there for me through thick and thin when I didn't have an obvious path forward with my life, but I was still passionate about all sorts of things. They thought, hey, as long as he's not out there in the streets doing drugs or whatever, he's going to be fine. He's going to make it. And they were there for me, helped me a lot.
Yeah.
My parents always gave me the advice to be secure as an individual, to go your own route. I thank my parents greatly for that. And the school system, not so much, but
Fair enough.
there's certainly been so many quotes and pieces of tidbits of wisdom that have been given to me over all the years doing this, just too many to even mention. But I think the whole of that has really shaped where I am.
Yeah, that's great. Are there any photographers out there that you think I should be talking to? Just give me a couple of names that you think are really worth having a chat to.
Have you talked with Guy?
I have just recently. Haven't released his episode. I think that's when we're talking now. By the time this comes out, I have actually released the episode.
Yeah, Guy's one of those guys, man. He's you're not going to meet many like him.
It was amazing. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a whole lot. There's a lot of up and coming talent out there these days. Have you talked to, let's see, boy, there's just so many. How about William Patino?
I have spoken to William. Yeah.
He's a good guy. How about we go a different route? Somebody you might not have talked to. How about Hamed?
I definitely haven't spoken to Hamed.
Yes, Hamed he's a fascinating guy, and he's one of I consider him the best desert photographer on the planet. He's definitely his desert landscapes, particularly from places that nobody thinks about, like out in the UAE, are just absolutely breathtaking. And he's also a professional photographer by trade.
Yeah.
Have you talked to Colin?
I have not.
Yeah, he's another guy. He's a scientist. He's a photographer. He's a wilderness advocate. He has some of the best desert and Southwest photography in the United States. I've known him for almost 20 years now. Colin Sillerud. Yeah, highly recommend you check out his work. Just from somebody from completely the other end of the world, though, I really recommend you check out Hamed. Like a guy that I think flies under a lot of people's radar. But if anybody out there's listening, they want somebody to go drool over their portfolio for a while, go look at Hamed's work.
Fantastic. Thanks for that. My last question is one that I've been asking since pretty much the beginning of the podcast. And it's been an interesting journey to see what photographers think about this topic. Do you like pineapple on pizza?
I do not. No, not my thing.
Okay,
No.
fair enough.
I'm a traditionalist.
Good for you. Good for you.
Could be because I just don't like pineapple in general.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just overly sweet for me. But on pizza, oof, it's a whole nother level.
Fantastic talking to you, Mark. Really appreciate you taking the time to to chat with us and give us some insight into some of your thinking. Where can people find your work?
They can go to my website, marcadamus.com. They can also find me on Instagram or 500 Pics. I have accounts there under my own name. And I'd like to mention that I am releasing a book, or actually did just release a book. They can find my new book, The Way Home, on my website at marcadamus.com.
Fantastic. Thanks very much, Mark.
Hey, thank you. Thank you, Grant.
Have you tried to go and be adventurous in your photography? If you have, leave a comment below and let me know about your adventure. Thanks again for listening to Landscape Photography World. I hope you enjoyed the show, and keep listening and keep listening because I'll be joined by some great guests in upcoming episodes. You can find my work in this podcast at grantswinburnphotography.com, along with prints and photography gear. I'm also on Vero, Photo, Instagram, YouTube, and Facebook. Don't forget to like and subscribe. I'm Grant Swinburne. I hope to see you out shooting soon.